When I say thug life, I mean that shit.
An active shooter opens fire on two neighbors and shuts down part of Brooksville. This unfolded in the area of Star and Irma Roads around 5 this evening. Tonight, 2 people are injured and the accused gunman is in custody. Good evening, I'm Dave Wagner.
And I'm Carolina Lead. It was a chaotic and violent scene that included a barn being set on fire, possibly to lure the victims. 10 Tampa Bay Shannon Clough has been in Brooksville all night. Shannon, it was a stressful few hours for the community tonight.
Well, the sheriff describes tonight as chaotic. Fire crews responded to a barn fire as deputies responded to an active shooter call. The sheriff telling us that the man behind the trigger was Steve Rusa. He says that Rusa shot 2 people, one of them in the hospital tonight, seriously injured. As for Rusa, he was shot by deputies.
Lights and sirens to the scene. Found kind of a hectic scene, to say the least.
Hernando County deputies responded to a call for a bonfire, gunshots, and people injured around 5 this evening along Irma Road in Brooksville.
We did have a building that was burning.
More concerning than that, there was an active shooter they couldn't locate. Sheriff Al Nienhuis says Steve Rusa set the barn on his property on fire. When people came to assist, he shot at them. 2 people were shot, one person he lives with and the other a neighbor. A woman who was shot has since been released from the hospital, and a man who was shot is seriously injured. Other people were shot at.
Committed some very extreme acts, including, we believe, setting the fire, shooting at least 2 people, shooting at least 1 or more others. So it was a very extreme, chaotic scene there for quite some time.
During this time, deputies didn't know where Rusa was. Neighbors were told to stay inside. Some who saw him earlier in the day told investigators
he had been depressed and acting strangely, and actually started shooting at the individual who lived on the property and the neighbors.
Investigators were able to confirm with a drone that Rusa was barricaded inside his house. Hostage negotiators tried getting him out. Rusa refused.
Preliminary information is at least 2 deputies fired their weapons. We're not sure yet if the suspect fired his, and the suspect is down. I'm not going to release his condition just yet.
And the sheriff telling us that no one is going to be allowed near the house as investigators continue their investigation throughout the night hours. The sheriff also added that Rusa has had little interaction with deputies in the past. I'm in Brooksville. Shannon Clough, 10 Tampa Bay.
Yes, I am going to say that I'm a thug.
Making national news again tonight for all the wrong reasons. This time, a shooting rampage that when the bullets stopped flying, left 6 people dead. Deputies in Tate County, Mississippi telling us the shooter fired his weapons at 3 different locations. But why? Our Zaria Ose is here now after returning from the town of Arkabutla. Zaria?
Yeah, new tonight, the Tate County, Mississippi sheriff calling the incident a shooting rampage after 6 people were found dead in the city of Arkabutla. Sheriff Brad Lance confirms the suspect did know some of the victims.
The suspect has been identified as 52-year-old Richard Dale Crum. Sheriff Lance tells me 4 victims were found at an Arkabutla Dam Road home. 1 person was shot and killed on Ben Road, and a man died at a nearby convenience store. The sheriff says while they don't have all the connections between the suspect and the victims, they do have a few confirmed.
There is a connection between our suspect and the female at the Ben Road address. The information we have is that victim is the ex-wife of the suspect. The male and female adults that were shot and killed at the house behind the suspect's residence, there is a connection between our suspect and them. They are related.
A 7th person was injured but not shot. Right now, Crum is only charged with the 1 count of first-degree murder for the convenience store shooting.
The other victims, additional charges are obviously coming for the other victims. I just don't have their names yet.
While they do know at least 3 weapons were in the suspect's possession through the day, there are still some pieces of information that aren't clear.
There were 2 handguns and the shotgun were the only weapons that were recovered. That doesn't mean we don't know which weapons were used on which or how or who, or if there were any other weapon that might have been discarded. We just don't know that yet. As far as the deceased victim at the store, we have found no connection yet between our suspect and that victim.
But he says he knows one thing for sure.
This guy was on a rampage.
As law Enforcement continues to investigate this shooting to understand exactly why this incident happened. We'll keep you updated. I'm Zaria Oates.
And I'm Jameson Euler. We begin with that breaking news in Hernando County. The sheriff says a community near Spring Hill is safe tonight after a hectic evening.
Yeah, according to the sheriff, a gunman lit a barn on fire and then shot at the people who came to help put it out. ABC Action News reporter Chad Mills joining us live in Brooksville with the very latest. Chad, I understand the sheriff says 3 people were shot.
3 people, that's correct. The sheriff says the gunman shot 2 of his neighbors and then eventually deputies shot the gunman, and it all happened on Irma Road. That's an area north of Spring Hill that's just in the distance there. You see the deputies' car right there. They still have a perimeter set up this evening because there's still a lot of work to do as they investigate what is left behind, even though, according to the sheriff, the community now safe and in no threat. The sheriff says all of this happened around 5 o'clock this evening. They got a 911 call about a fire and shots fired in the area I just described. And when deputies arrived, they found a barn that was on fire, but more importantly, they found 2 people who had been shot. One was en route to the hospital in a private vehicle. Deputies had to rescue the other person who was in a yard near the home where the shooting happened. The sheriff says they had to be careful rescuing that neighbor because the suspected gunman, Steve Russa, was still at large. Eventually, they used a drone, actually flew it into the house to verify that Russa was barricaded inside his home. Deputies tried to negotiate with Russa, but the sheriff says ultimately Russa was shot by deputies and taken into custody. As for the fire, which eventually put itself out, the sheriff believes Russa lit it before the shooting.
I haven't talked with any of the witnesses, but it almost appears as though he either did not want them to extinguish the fire or it was set deliberately to lure people in to shoot them. Of course, we may never know exactly what was going through his mind at the time. If it was set intentionally to lure people over and to cause more victims, that's very frustrating, and it just goes to show that even when you're trying to do a good deed, if somebody is either seriously mentally ill or has criminal intent, you have to be very careful.
The sheriff did not say what condition the suspect Russa is in after he was shot by deputies. He also couldn't say what prompted deputies to shoot him. As for the neighbors who were shot, he thinks one of them has been released from the hospital. He's not sure about the condition of the other neighbor. What he is sure about, though, is that the scene behind me is large. It will take hours, if not days, to process. Deputies are out here, but the Florida Department of Law Enforcement out here investigating as well, collecting evidence, piecing together the series of events that led to the fire and the shooting and the aftermath. We're live here in Hernando County this evening.
So that nigga crazy.
Greg, well, it's been a long, emotional day that has rocked the small town of Arkabutla, Mississippi, and tonight officials are working to figure out exactly what happened and why. 19-year-old Ethan Cash woke up to the sounds of a gunshot. He says he grabbed his pistol and ran outside to see this.
I see, dude walking back here with a shotgun. It looked like he was toting it like this.
He says he ran across the street to the truck where a man was shot, but he was already dead. Cash is just one person who was rattled by the events that happened in this North Mississippi town.
I had a moment where, I could have saved somebody's life and I missed it, man. And it kind of hurts.
According to the Tate County Sheriff's Office, 52-year-old Richard Dale Crum is responsible not only for this murder, but 5 others today. They say they're still working on the exact timeline, but they say a body was found at a home on Bend Road. 4 more bodies were found at a second home on Arkabutla Dam Road, where they say Crum lived. Crum's ex-wife and stepfather are among the dead.
At this point, what we're finding out is no, I don't believe he knew all of them.
But the question tonight is why. Officials say at this point they have no idea, and they've called in the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation to assist. What they do know is things like this don't usually happen here. Less than 300 people live in Arkabutla.
That's a small community out there in Arkabutla. Most everybody knows everybody there. Just a tight-knit, nice community to live in.
Now, one other man was injured today but is expected to be okay. Crum is facing 1 count of first-degree murder, and other charges are expected in the coming days. For now, reporting live in Tate County, I'm Ashley Paul, WREG News, Channel 3.
And you can stay with News Channel 3 for continuing coverage of the deadly shooting in Arkabutla. We are working to learn more about suspect Richard Crum. The sheriff's office says 2 of the victims were relatives, his ex-wife and his stepfather. We'll have the latest on the investigation this weekend on our newscast and online at
Stop it. Get some help.
In last night's hours-long standoff in Brooksville is dead, according to the Hernando County Sheriff's Office.
64-year-old Steve Russa died after being shot by deputies after a standoff near the High Point neighborhood. 8 on your side's Trevor Sahaki was first on that scene last night, and he's live in our newsroom now with exactly how it all played out. Trevor.
Yeah, Jack and Allison, deputies initially responded to a 911 call about a fire in Brooksville. Then calls came in about a shooter. The sheriff described it as a wild scene.
It was a very extreme, chaotic scene there for quite some time.
According to the Hernando County Sheriff's Office, Steve Russa, the suspect in last night's shooting and standoff, is dead after being shot by deputies.
It's unbelievable because here it's really quiet.
The sheriff told neighbors to stay inside and be on high alert for hours.
I was on Sunshine Grove Road coming home, gonna come home on the Star, and they stopped me there and said that there was an issue.
According to the sheriff's office, Russa set fire to a barn and then shot at neighbors who tried to help put it out. 2 neighbors were hit. One escaped during the chaos. The other had to be rescued by deputies.
It almost appears as though he either did not want them to extinguish the fire or it was set deliberately to lure people in to shoot them. Of course, we may never know exactly what was going through his mind at the time.
The sheriff said Russa locked himself in a home for hours.
Hostage negotiators got close and tried to make contact with him. He completely refused to acknowledge our existence or in any way communicate with us.
So the SWAT team forced their way into the home and used chemical agents to get him out. The sheriff's office said Russa came out through the front door holding a gun, and SWAT team members shot him in fear for their own safety. Neighbors are thankful it's all over.
Thank you, and I'm glad that they were here to resolve it.
And as for the 2 victims, one of them, a man, he was taken, a woman actually, was treated and released from the hospital. The other, a man, is still in the hospital, is in critical but stable condition. No deputies were hurt during the whole incident. The barn on fire did burn down and extinguish itself. No other buildings were touched. In the newsroom, Trevor Sahaki.
I lived a thug life, baby. I'm hopeless.
People were killed in a series of shootings there in Tate County, Mississippi. Governor of Mississippi, Tate Reeves, has been briefed on this. This is what we know. The Tate County Sheriff, Brad Lance, confirmed today that the unnamed suspect was apprehended by a deputy and is now in jail. If you're familiar with this area there in Tate County, this is around Coldwater, Mississippi, near Arkabutla Lake. The initial call to police about a shooting at a store on the 8000 block of Arkabutla Road happened around 11 in the morning. The second shooting was reported later at another nearby location. The third notification of a shooting happened at another location before the suspect. All right, we do have the suspect's name. He is 52-year-old Richard Crum. He was apprehended. He was charged with 1 count of first-degree murder. Other charges are expected to be coming in this horrible, horrible shooting incident happening in very rural Mississippi, Tate County. 6 people killed in a series of shootings there. Okay, and so we do have actually another development we want to get to as well in this story. We have now a mugshot of the suspect. That right there is Richard Crum. He's 52 years old. He has now been arrested and charged with 1 count of first-degree murder. Other charges are expected to follow after he allegedly carried out this series of shootings there in Tate County, killing 6 people in numerous different crime scenes, starting all around 11 this morning there. And so we're going to stay on top of this story. If deputies do decide to hold a press conference on this, we'll make sure to bring it to you. We also know that we have some of our Fox News Channel correspondents down on the scene as well, covering this story. So if we learn more, we'll bring that to you here on Live Now from Fox.
He pulled up, hurry. He busted into the house through the front door, and I wrestled with him, and I lost, as you can see, but my wife lost more. I know who he is now, but anyhow, we were just one of all his victims.
Why do you think he targeted you?
I don't know. Why did he target a fella up there at the store? Why did he target them 4 people over there at that other house? He even must have chased one of them down because they found him in the road.
But you escaped.
Another mass shooting. It's got to go back to mental health. That's the problem. Guns don't kill. People kill. You know, all these mass shootings upset me. Now it really does. It all. If y'all would excuse me.
It is such a tragedy. We have most people are just really good, and we never would have thought anything like that would have happened here. I'm so sorry for all that don't know who the victims are, but I'm so sorry.
I heard the gunshot from inside my house. I had just woken up and everything, and I look out the window and I see, dude walking back here with a shotgun. It looked like he was toting it like this. Anyways, I decided to put my shoes on and hoodie and everything. I already had my pistol on me, so I walk outside, and people are, this lady honks at me and tells me that to not go inside. So I'm just like cautious, and I walk back and everything, kind of just observing the situation. I go up to the truck where a guy got shot at, and I check his pulse and everything, make sure he's okay. He's already gone at this point. I'm 19 years old, concealed carrying. Like, there needs to be a lot more people like who understand that dangers are everywhere and you need to be protected. This guy, he wasn't protected. He's a war veteran, man. He's not coming into this tiny town of Arkabutla, thinking that somebody's gonna pull a gun on him and his brother. Like, man. Definitely with 6 or 7 people, being confirmed dead, it definitely is a relief, him being in custody. But let's hope for that death sentence, man.
We have an update to a story that we first brought you earlier this weekend right here on Brightside. Hernando County deputies say the person they believe is responsible for an active shooter situation in Brooksville is dead. Authorities say around 5 p.m. Friday evening, they got reports of gunfire near Star and Irma roads. Deputies say 64-year-old Steve Russa lit a barn on fire, then shot 2 of his neighbors, wounding 1 of them. Detectives say Russa hid in a house armed with several guns. The sheriff says a SWAT team eventually entered the home and released chemical agents that forced Russa outside. Deputies say Russa ran out holding at least 1 firearm, prompting the SWAT team to open fire. He died at the scene. One of the people Russa shot is still in the hospital. Right now, the Hernando County Sheriff's Office, along with FDLE, ATF, and the State Fire Marshal, are investigating.
Goodbye. Morning, new details in a deadly shooting rampage that left 6 people dead, rocking the small town of less than 300 residents in northern Mississippi. The surveillance video, part of the police investigation, showing the suspect at a convenience store where he shot 1 man, investigators say had no connection to him. Authorities say the 52-year-old gunman, Richard Dale Crum, knew several of the other victims, including his ex-wife and stepfather. The shooting spree spanned 3 separate locations in Arkabutla, about 30 miles outside of Memphis, over the course of several hours on Friday.
We were responding to that call when another call comes in that there had been a shooting at a residence.
Officials say Crum drove from the convenience store to his ex-wife's house, fatally shooting her before continuing to a residence next to his own home and killing 4 other people, including a man authorities believe was his stepfather. Crum is now in custody. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves tweeting, quote, "We believe he acted alone. His motive is not yet known." And this was at least the 8th mass shooting in America since this past Sunday, and at least the 73rd since the start of the new year. That's according to the Gun Violence Archive. And that's an average of more than one mass shooting every single day this year. Overnight, President Biden released a statement saying enough. He's calling on Congress to pass gun reform legislation because, quote, we owe action to American communities being torn apart by gun violence.
Sugar cookie, man. This is